From the golden sands of Arabia, where the desert winds carried songs of tribes and the stars told ancient stories, a light was destined to shine, a light that would transform history forever. But how did it all begin? What world gave birth to Islam, and who was the man behind this global faith that today is followed by more than 2 billion people? Stay with me, because in this journey we're about to travel back more than 1400 years to uncover the origins of Islam, from a single revelation in a cave to the rise of a community that reshaped civilizations. Under the sun and scattered oases where life clung to water. At the crossroads of mighty empires, the Byzantine Empire to the west and the Persian Sasanian Empire to the east, Arabia was both isolated and connected. Caravans passed through carrying silk, spices, and stories from lands far away. Yet at its heart, Arabia was a land of tribes. Life here was tribal and proud. People identified themselves not as individuals, but as members of clans and tribes. Loyalty to the tribe was everything. Honor had to be defended, sometimes with poetry and often with blood. Blood feuds could last generations, and wars were fought over camels, wells, or wounded pride. But Arabia was not only swords and battles, it was also poetry. The Arabs loved words, and their poets were the celebrities of their age. In marketplaces like Ukaz, tribes would gather to hear poets recite verses about love, bravery, and honor. Poetry was memory, history, and identity. And then there was Mecca, the beating heart of Arabia. Situated in a valley surrounded by mountains, Mecca was home to the Quraysh tribe, guardians of the Kaaba, a cube-shaped sanctuary that housed hundreds of idols. People from all over Arabia would come to Mecca to worship, trade, and seek blessings. Yet, despite the spiritual atmosphere, Mecca was also deeply materialistic. The Quraysh were wealthy merchants, and the Kaaba brought them both religious authority and economic power. The religion of Arabia before Islam was not unified. Many tribes worshipped idols, stones, or celestial beings. The Kaaba itself contained statues of gods and goddesses, the most famous being Hubal, Al-Lat, Al-Uzza, and Manat. But not all Arabs were idol worshippers. Some practiced Christianity, especially in the north where Byzantine influence was strong. Others followed Judaism, particularly in places like Yathrib, later called Medina. And some were what the Arabs called Hanifs, seekers of pure monotheism who rejected idols and believed in one God, Allah. This was Arabia before Islam. A land of contrasts, of cruelty and generosity, of tribal feuds and poetic genius, of idol worship and whispers of monotheism. It was into this world that a child was born in the city of Mecca. A child who would one day change not only Arabia but the entire world. The birth of Muhammad, 570 CE. In the year 570 CE, an event occurred that became legendary among the Arabs. A Christian ruler from Yemen named Abraha marched towards Mecca with a great army and even elephants, intending to destroy the Kaaba and redirect pilgrimage to his own cathedral. But the Meccans, unable to defend themselves, left the Kaaba in the hands of God. And as the story goes, flocks of birds appeared, dropping stones upon Abraha's army, forcing it to retreat. This year became known as the Year of the Elephant. And in that very year, a boy was born in Mecca, in the respected clan of Banu Hashim, part of the Quraysh tribe. His name was Muhammad, son of Abdullah and Amina. But Muhammad's life began with loss. His father, Abdullah, died before he was born. His mother, Amina, passed away when he was just 6. Orphaned and vulnerable, he was placed under the care of his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib, and later, his uncle Abu Talib. Despite hardship, Muhammad grew up with a reputation for honesty. As a young boy, he worked as a shepherd, a humble job that taught patience, responsibility, and solitude. Later, he became a merchant, joining caravan journeys across deserts and lands. was just 6. Orphaned and vulnerable, he was placed under the care of his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib, and later his uncle Abu Talib. Despite hardship, Muhammad grew up with a reputation for honesty. As a young boy, he worked as a shepherd, a humble job that taught patience, responsibility, and solitude. Later, he became a merchant, joining caravan journeys across deserts and lands. The Quraysh counterattacked and the Muslims suffered heavy losses. Muhammad himself was injured. Though painful, Uhud was a lesson in discipline and resilience. The Battle of the Trench. The Quraysh, allied with other tribes, marched on Medina with an army of 10,000. Outnumbered, the Muslims defended the city by digging a vast trench around it, a strategy unfamiliar in Arabia. The enemy laid siege but failed to breach the trench. After weeks of stalemate, storms scattered their camp. The Muslims had survived once again. These battles were not just wars, they were existential struggles, each one determined whether Islam would survive or vanish. And with each challenge, the Muslim community grew stronger, more united, more determined. The Treaty of Hudaybiyah. 2 years after the trench, Muhammad and his followers set out to perform pilgrimage in Mecca, but the Quraysh blocked them. Tension was high. Instead of fighting, a treaty was signed at a place called Hudaybiyah. Its terms seemed unfavorable to Muslims. They had to delay their pilgrimage and make concessions. Many companions were disheartened, but the treaty brought peace. And in that peace, Islam spread more rapidly than ever before. Tribes across Arabia embraced the faith, and the Quraysh themselves began to soften. The conquest of Mecca. 2 years later, the Quraysh violated the treaty. The time had come. Muhammad marched on Mecca, not with hundreds but with an army of 10,000. The Quraysh, overwhelmed, surrendered without resistance. Now imagine this moment. For 20 years, Muhammad and his followers had been mocked, beaten, and driven out of this very city. They returned not as victims, but as victors. And yet, there was no revenge, no mass punishment. Muhammad declared forgiveness for nearly all his enemies. He entered the Kaaba, destroyed its idols, and proclaimed, "Truth has come, and falsehood has vanished." The Kaaba was rededicated to the worship of Allah alone. Mecca, once the center of idolatry, became the spiritual heart of Islam. The farewell pilgrimage, last sermon. In the year 632, Muhammad performed his only full pilgrimage, known as the farewell pilgrimage. On the plain of Arafat, before a vast gathering, he delivered his final sermon. He reminded the people of the sanctity of life, property, and honor. He declared that all humans are equal, Arab and non-Arab, black and white, none superior except in piety. He emphasized the rights of women, urging kindness and fairness. He left the Qur'an and his Sunnah as guidance, warning against division. It was a sermon of unity, justice, and faith. Shortly after returning to Medina, Muhammad fell ill. On his final day, he prayed with his companions, then returned home. With his head resting in the lap of his wife Aisha, he whispered, "To the highest companion," and his soul returned to his Lord. The Prophet of Islam passed away at the age of 63. Medina wept. The world would never be the same. Part 4. The Caliphs, Spread of Islam Conclusion. After the Prophet. The Caliphs. The passing of Prophet Muhammad left the Muslim community in shock. Who would lead them now? Who could carry forward his mission? The companions gathered and chose Abu Bakr, Muhammad's closest friend, as the first Caliph, Khalifat Rasul Allah, the successor of the Messenger of God. Abu Bakr's rule was brief, only 2 years but crucial. Some tribes tried to abandon Islam after the Prophet's death. Abu Bakr stood firm, uniting the community, ensuring that Islam would not fragment. Under his leadership, the Muslim armies began to push beyond Arabia's borders. After him came Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second caliph. Known for his justice and strength, Umar oversaw the rapid expansion of Islam. In just 10 years, Muslim rule extended over the Persian Empire and much of Byzantine territory. Cities like Damascus, Jerusalem, and Cairo became centers of a growing civilization. Umar was also remembered for his humility. He would walk the streets at night disguised, ensuring justice was served to the weakest in society. Next was Uthman ibn Affan, the third caliph. He is remembered for compiling the Qur'an into a single unified book. Before Uthman, the Qur'an was preserved in the memories of reciters and in scattered writings. To protect it from variations, Uthman ordered copies to be made and sent across the empire. This preserved the Qur'an exactly as it was revealed. The fourth caliph was Ali ibn Abi Talib, cousin and son-in-law of the Prophet. Ali was known for his knowledge, courage, and wisdom. His period, however, was marked by internal conflict, the first civil strife within Islam. Yet his legacy remains deeply respected, especially for his devotion to justice and truth. These four, Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali, are remembered as the rightly guided caliphs. Together, they ensured that the message of Islam not only survived, but spread across continents. It was here that people began to call him Al-Amin, the trustworthy. He was admired not for wealth or power, but for integrity. He was the man people trusted to settle disputes, safeguard valuables, and speak truthfully. At age 25, Muhammad's life changed when he entered the service of a wealthy merchant widow named Khadijah. Impressed by his honesty, she proposed marriage. Despite being older than him, their marriage was full of love, respect, and loyalty. Together, they built a household that became a refuge of kindness. And it was during these years that Muhammad began to withdraw from the noise of Mecca. Troubled by the injustice around him, the oppression of the poor, the mistreatment of women, and the blind worship of idols, he sought solitude in a cave outside the city. Little did he know, his search for truth was about to transform into a mission that would change history forever. Part 2. The First Revelation. Early Preaching. The First Revelation. Now we arrive at a turning point, not only in Muhammad's life, but in human history. It is the year 610. Muhammad is 40 years old. For years he has retreated to a cave on Mount Hira, just outside Mecca. There, in silence, he reflects upon the injustice he sees in society, the oppression of the weak, the endless tribal wars, and the idolatry that fills the Kaaba. On one night in the month of Ramadan, as he sits in meditation, something extraordinary happens. The stillness of the cave is shattered. A presence fills the space. The angel Gabriel. The angel commands him with a single word, Iqra, read, recite. Muhammad trembles. He replies, I cannot read. But again the command comes, Iqra. And again Muhammad answers, I cannot read. A third time, Gabriel embraces him and says, read in the name of your Lord who created man from a clot. Read, and your Lord is the most generous, who taught by the pen, taught man what he did not know. These words would later form the opening verses of Surah Al-Alaq, the very first revelation of the Qur'an. Shaken to his core, Muhammad runs from the cave. His heart races, his body trembles. He rushes home to Khadijah, crying out, cover me, cover me! She wraps him in a cloak and listens as he tells her what happened. Instead of doubting him, Khadijah comforts him. She reassures him, by God, Allah will never disgrace you. You maintain family ties, you help the poor, you honor your guests, and you stand with those in need. Seeking clarity, Khadijah takes him to her cousin Waraka ibn Nawfal, a Christian scholar familiar with the scriptures. Waraka listens carefully and then says, this is the same angel that came to Moses. You, Muhammad, have been chosen as a prophet. And with that, a new chapter begins, the chapter of Islam. Quiet years of preaching. For the next 3 years, Muhammad keeps his mission mostly private. He shares the message only with those closest to him. Khadijah is the very first to believe. She never wavers, standing by him with faith and courage. Young Ali, his cousin, only 10 years old, accepts Islam. His dear friend Abu Bakr embraces the message without hesitation. And Zayd ibn Haritha, Muhammad's adopted son, also joins. These early Muslims are few, but their conviction is strong. They begin to gather secretly, sometimes in Muhammad's home, sometimes in quiet places away from Quraysh eyes. The message they hear is simple yet revolutionary. Worship only one God, Allah. Abandon idols and false gods. Stand for justice, care for the poor, protect the orphan, respect women, and live with honesty. It is a message that uplifts the oppressed, but threatens the powerful. Public preaching, Quraysh opposition. After 3 years of quiet preaching, a command comes. Proclaim openly what you are commanded and turn away from the polytheists. Muhammad climbs a hill overlooking Mecca and calls out to the people of Quraysh. They gather, curious, for Muhammad was known as Al-Amin, the trustworthy. He asks them, if I told you an army was behind this hill, would you believe me? Yes, they reply, for we have never known you to lie. So then Muhammad declares, "I warn you of a severe punishment. I call you to worship none but Allah." The crowd falls silent. Some scoff. His uncle Abu Lahab shouts in anger, "May you be ruined! Is this why you gathered us?" From that moment, opposition begins. The Quraysh, guardians of the Kaaba and its idols, see Islam as a threat, not only to their religion, but to their wealth and power. Pilgrims bring offerings to idols. If those idols are rejected, what becomes of Mecca's economy? So they begin to mock Muhammad. They call him a poet, a madman, a sorcerer. They spread lies about him to visiting tribes. When mocking fails, they turn to persecution. Muslims are tortured, beaten, and starved. Slaves who accept Islam face brutal punishments. One of them, Bilal, is dragged across the burning sand, whipped and pressed under heavy. When mocking fails, they turn to persecution. Muslims are tortured, beaten, and starved. Slaves who accept Islam face brutal punishments. One of them, Bilal, is dragged across the burning sand, whipped and pressed under heavy stones, yet he continues to proclaim, "Ahad, Ahad, one God, one God." Another family, Yasir, his wife Sumayya, and their son Ammar, face relentless torture. Sumayya becomes the very first martyr of Islam, killed for refusing to renounce her faith. In the midst of this suffering, some Muslims seek refuge elsewhere. Muhammad advises a group to migrate across the Red Sea to Abyssinia, ruled by a just Christian king known as the Negus. There they are protected, and when Quraysh emissaries try to drag them back, the Negus refuses, saying, "What these people believe and what we believe is like two lines from the same light." Meanwhile, in Mecca, persecution only grows harsher. The Quraysh impose a boycott on Muhammad, his family, and his followers. For years, they are cut off from trade, food, and marriage alliances. Children cry from hunger. Adults chew on leaves to survive. It is a time of immense hardship, a test of faith, the year of sorrow, the night journey. In the midst of suffering, Muhammad faces personal tragedy. His beloved wife, Khadija, passes away. Soon after, his uncle Abu Talib, his protector against Quraysh hostility, also dies. This year becomes known as the Year of Sorrow. Grieving and vulnerable, Muhammad seeks support beyond Mecca. He travels to the city of Taif, but instead of welcome, he is mocked and driven out, pelted with stones until his feet bleed. Yet it is after this crushing rejection that one of the most miraculous events occurs: the Isra and Mi'raj, the night journey and ascension. One night, Muhammad is transported from Mecca to Jerusalem. From there, he ascends through the heavens, meeting prophets before him: Moses, Jesus, Abraham. At the highest point, he stands in the presence of Allah. It is during this journey that the 5 daily prayers are established, a gift and a responsibility for the Muslim community. The night journey reminds Muhammad and his followers that even in sorrow, divine support remains. 'Tis part 3, Hijra, Battles Conquest of Mecca, the migration to Medina, Hijra, 622 CE. The persecution in Mecca reached unbearable limits. Muslims were beaten, starved, and mocked without mercy. Though the night journey had strengthened faith, the Quraysh only grew more violent. It was then that a new opportunity emerged. Delegations from a city called Yathrib, north of Mecca, had been listening to Muhammad. They admired his honesty and hoped he could settle disputes among their feuding tribes. They embraced Islam and invited him to come. After 13 years of struggle in Mecca, Allah gave permission: migrate. And so, Muslims secretly began leaving Mecca, slipping away in small groups. The Quraysh, fearing Muhammad's growing influence, plotted to assassinate him. But on the night of their plan, Muhammad left his home under the cover of darkness, while his cousin Ali slept in his bed to mislead the attackers. With his close companion Abu Bakr, Muhammad hid in the cave of Thor, just outside the city. Quraysh trackers nearly discovered them, but a spider had spun a web across the entrance, and pigeons nested nearby. Believing no one could be inside, the pursuers left. After days of travel, Muhammad and Abu Bakr reached Yathrib. The people welcomed him with joy, lining the streets, chanting, "The Prophet has come! The Prophet has come!" Yathrib became known as Medinat an-Nabi, the city of the Prophet, or simply Medina. This migration, the Hijra, was not just a change of location. It was the birth of a new community, a society based not on tribe, but on faith, a society bound by the Constitution of Medina. a document that established peace between Muslims, Jews, and other groups in the city. The Hijra was so important that it marks the very beginning of the Islamic calendar, the battles of Islam. The Quraysh, however, did not rest. They could not allow Muhammad's community to thrive, and so war began. The Battle of Badr. The first major battle came at Badr, a valley near Medina. The Muslims were just over 300 poorly armed, facing a Quraysh army of about 1,000. Against all odds, the Muslims won. They saw it as divine support, proof that Allah was with them. The Battle of Uhud. But victory was not always theirs. At Uhud, near Medina, the Quraysh returned with a force of 3,000. The Muslims fought bravely, but some disobeyed the Prophet's orders, abandoning their positions to collect spoils. The global spread of Islam. In just a few decades, Islam grew from a small community in Medina to a vast civilization stretching from Spain in the west to India in the east. But Islam's spread was not only by armies. It was carried by traders across seas, by scholars in universities, by Sufis who spread spirituality, and by communities who lived by the principles of honesty and justice. In North Africa, Islam blended with local traditions. In Persia, it absorbed elements of philosophy and culture. In Central Asia and India, it encountered great civilizations and added to their richness. Later, in Spain, Islamic civilization would shine with science, art, and philosophy, influencing Europe for centuries. What began in a desert city of Mecca became a faith and civilization shaping the destiny of nations. The Qur'an, preserved guidance. At the heart of Islam remained the Qur'an, the word of God, revealed to Muhammad over 23 years. Its verses guided not only rituals of prayer, but also ethics, justice, family life, and community. Through the careful work of Uthman and the devotion of countless reciters, the Qur'an has been preserved exactly as it was revealed. Muslims believe it is a living miracle, unchanged for over 14 centuries. Alongside it, the Sunnah, the sayings and actions of the Prophet, provided practical examples of how to live by divine guidance. Together, the Qur'an and Sunnah shaped Islamic law, ethics, and spirituality. The legacy of Islam's origin. And so we return to our question: what is the origin of Islam? It began in the solitude of a cave with a single word: Iqra, read. It grew in the face of persecution, with the courage of men and women who refused to abandon their faith. It survived exile, battles, and betrayal. It triumphed with forgiveness, unity, and the strength of belief. From a humble orphan in Mecca to a leader whose message now guides over 2 billion people, the story of Islam's origin is one of faith, resilience, and transformation. It is not just a story for Muslims, it is a story for humanity, a reminder that truth can emerge from struggle, that justice can rise from oppression, and that one person's vision can change the course of history.